Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
I am ready for rapid fire. I thought we had a really good conversation about OC criteria, and now it's time to have a little bit of fun.
No, Josh, it was not the South Bend Tribune. So fill in the blank. It's blank that Marcus Freeman has to find a new offensive coordinator after a little more than a year on the job.
It is. It is blank that Marcus Freeman has to find a new offensive coordinator. It is honestly unfortunate that he has to find a new offensive coordinator. Because as I know that Tommy Rees was kind of a holdover or kind of was acquired, and Marcus Freeman, whether he wanted him or not, didn't really have a say in the situation. But now it's when you're trying to get things rolling as a first year head coach and you're trying to establish certain things. I feel like the last thing that you want to lose is a key coordinator. And whether or not you think Tommy Rees is a key coordinator, that's up to you. But it's always vital when you lose someone like that, an offensive coordinators. And so now, to me, it's a big opportunity in Marcus Freeman's era. I think it's the biggest decision that he's had to make so far as, the head coach. And I think it's ultimately going to determine, what level of success Notre Dame has in the near future. I think that you have to hit a home run on something like this. And again, it's going to really determine what kind of success Notre Dame has in the next, obviously, 2 to 3 years in terms of things.
Yeah. And I think opportunity is the word you used. And that's the biggest thing to me for Marcus Freeman is this now 1 year into his tenure at Notre Dame, he inherited an offensive coordinator coming in, and the offensive coordinator had, he played for Brian Kelly. He coached under Brian Kelly. Most of what he, had in both his playing and coaching career was Brian Kelly. And so Marcus Freeman, he obviously coached for a year under Brian Kelly as well, brought him here. And, that helped him, was a big part, just being here and helping him get the job. But he now gets a complete reset on the offensive side of the ball. He gets to handpick the guy who's going to be in that position, who can set the identity for Notre Dame's offense for the foreseeable future. So I think it is a great opportunity for Marcus Freeman and a huge opportunity as well. So, I think I just think it's really good for him because now he gets to be the guy to handpick that guy who's going to be his offensive play caller, quarterback developer, recruiter, the whole thing. He gets to handpick that guy. So I think it is a great opportunity for Marcus Freeman. Scale of 1 to 10. We haven't talked about Tommy Rees since last week. How badly do you want to see Rees succeed at Notre Dame? Scale of 1 to 10.
In terms of Rees's success at Alabama, I would put on my sliding scale, honestly, I'd put it at like 8 or 9. It is up there for me because I think it only says, kind of good things about Notre Dame. I think that if you have a coordinator that started out at a program like Notre Dame and then could potentially go to a program like Alabama and have even more success, I think that it's a good look for Notre Dame. And more so, I think it'll quiet a lot of the jabronis, as you would say, it's talking all this kind of crap about Tommy Rees. I know he had, his what's the word? His like failures and stuff like that. And I get, that there was disappointments in the Stanford game and the Marshall game and the Cal game and basically all the games that they lost that they shouldn't have. But at the end of the day, I just, I do want to see him succeed because I think he has a good scheme. And I think that he ultimately caught a lot of flack for maybe a lot of things that weren't necessarily on him. Did he have a part of them? Of course he did. But again, it's just, to me, it's a good look for Tommy Rees. I think he's a great young mind in the game. And I want to see Tommy Rees take his game to the next level as well, because I think he's got a lot of potential talent. Like, I'd love to see Tommy Rees in the NFL someday.
Yeah, but like, what happens, when you have an ex, you break up, eventually everybody moves on. But do you really want to see your ex, with someone else, that could be perceived as like better than you and have, like thriving and all that kind of stuff after you. It's like you want to see him with some loser for a while, right? But at the same time, it's like Tommy Rees is still a Notre Dame guy. He was still part of a team that played for a national championship. Obviously, Golick Jr. loves him, but it's like
Dan Orlovsky loves him.
I want to, like, I think the biggest reason, yeah, Dan Orlovsky does love him. The biggest reason, that Rees took this, I think it's because, like the NFL future, that he's kind of always, I think, had for himself out there, and I think that he thinks this gives him a better shot, So like, it's between like a 7.5 or 8 for me because of his Notre Dame connection and all that stuff. It's like I want to see him do good and be able to go on and take that next step, but it's like, do you really want to see him do that well, right after leaving Notre Dame when there were some ups and downs and all that kind of stuff here? But definitely want to see him succeed and just basically get that NFL job and go on and have that NFL career.
I just think that's ultimately what he's after. He talks about all this NFL film that he watches and da-da-da-da-da. I think his big picture, like bulletin board above his, desk every day is like NFL dream job. I just think that that's ultimately what he's working towards.
We are not Marshall. Rees dumped us for the hot chick. That's that may be right. That may be right. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Philadelphia Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni says he's had a chip on his shoulder since he was not retained as the Chiefs wide receivers coach when Andy Reid was hired by Kansas City in 2012.
It's just funny. Like, you're a wide receivers coach in Andy Reid's offense. Like, he has proven track record of, working, he's honestly one of the best offensive minded coaches in the NFL and probably the last 2 decades, for the work that he's done with the Eagles and the Chiefs. And so just because, a guy comes in and there's a fresh start and he probably has a guy that he's comfortable with and a guy that knows his scheme well and knows, what he's trying to accomplish and the innovation and all that stuff. I just think it's funny that he carries that chip, but if that's what gets him through the day and what motivates him, then that's, I can't blame him for that. But to me, I just think it's a little nitpicky, kind of funny that is what he holds on to ultimately.
Sirianni seems like the guy who's always got to like have a chip on his shoulder,
Yeah,
like,
just looking at him on the sideline, sometimes he always just seems a little deranged. Like he's like
that crazy look in his eye, man.
Like he just got bit by a squirrel with rabies or something.
I know.
It's just
well, like the whole thing. Remember when they went to Indy this year and they beat the Eagles, and he's like, and that's for Frank Reich, because the Colts had fired Frank Reich and all that stuff. It's like, some guys, I guess, just got to carry that chip, and that's always got to be the thing.
Yeah, it seems like he's one of those guys who's always looking for the newest chip to get him through. Like
right.
He needs that push to get him through today or this moment or whatever the moment might be.
Right, and look, apparently, David Culley, the guy who ended up being the head coach in Houston for, I think he only got a season before Lovie Smith, but he was Andy Reid's receivers coach, and he brought him over with him from Philadelphia. And Sirianni was still like a young position coach at the time. He had been in Kansas City, just like when Marcus Freeman took the job here. Other than the agreement with Tommy Rees, it's like Freeman was under no obligation to keep a bunch of guys around, and he obviously parted ways with some different guys on the staff. And any coach who takes over, you're not obligated to keep anybody on just because they happen to be on staff, So I don't think anyone has any problem with Andy Reid bringing in his own guy. And, again, it's like Sirianni just out there looking for the next chip everywhere he looks. I mean, it's got him to the Super Bowl. See how it plays out for him this week. Speaking of which Super Bowl coach would you rather have as the coach of your team, Sirianni or Reid?
This is 100% no doubter, no brainer. Didn't think twice. Andy Reid, and I just, I've been on the record before. Again, Sirianni, give him credit for what he's done, but there's been a lot of things in place for him to succeed, and he's still running practices, still running game day, still, doing a lot of things. But I still think if you took Sirianni out and put in any average to above average coach, that they would have a lot of the success that Sirianni had. I still think that they've
You're back
had
in
one of the.
Julian Love still. You're with Julian Love
I
on
am.
this.
But I think that he's had a relatively, they didn't have to play a first place schedule in the regular season. The hardest teams that they got to face were the Cowboys and Vikings. Then you got to play Daniel Jones for the third time in the playoff, and then you got to go against quarterback 5 in the NFC Championship. So like that's not a hard path, in my opinion, when you're the only team that gets a bye week because you're the number 1 seed. So again,
We get it, Jess. Like every chance you've got, you mentioned the fact that they have had the easiest path to the Super Bowl.
I just had to reiterate it. And so when we're talking about a second-year head coach making it to
when
the
we
Super
talk
Bowl,
about the Super Bowl Friday, I'm sure you'll do the same thing.
Correct. And then you talk about someone like Andy Reid, who's just been an innovator of the offensive game and changed the way that the offense is being run, and the consistent passing attack, and what he was able to do with Donovan McNabb and Michael Vick, and now Patrick Mahomes with the Chiefs. There's just so much talent that follow and success that follows Andy Reid, and he does it his own way. He's his own play designer. He's his own play caller. The way he's revolutionized the offense in the last 2 decades, I would 100% love to be a part of Andy Reid's staff and learn all of the wisdom that he has.
Yeah, and I mean, a friend of ours is a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and he has a friend who's a Philadelphia Eagles fan. And I remember when Andy Reid got the job in Kansas City, the Eagles fan told the Chiefs fan, well, good luck. You'll never get to the Super Bowl. And, at that point, Kansas City wasn't even getting to the playoffs. And that's why Andy Reid got the opportunity right away.
Yeah, then he took Alex Smith to the playoffs.
That's exactly right. This is a guy, Andy Reid, who's been a head coach in the NFL for 25 years, and he's been to the playoffs 19 of those 25 years, and he's about to coach in his 4th Super Bowl as well. And this is, it's a Chiefs organization, one that, as I used to tell my Chiefs fan, you can go back to Len Dawson. Like Patrick Mahomes is the first homegrown quarterback that Kansas City has developed and turned into, like a legit star quarterback. And obviously Mahomes is at otherworldly level, especially considered to Len Dawson, but Len Dawson did win a Super Bowl as well. So my point is, like, they went decades, like 40 some years in between having legitimate homegrown franchise quarterbacks. And you can say, well, Andy Reid lucked into having Patrick Mahomes. Well, he's part of developing. Remember, Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith for a year, and Reid also got to the playoffs with Alex Smith and won 2 of the, they've won 7 straight division titles now. They won the first 2 with Alex Smith. It was before Patrick Mahomes.
The AFC Championship might as well just be called the Chiefs and Others game at this point.
That's right. So I don't know if I directly answered the question, but Andy Reid is obviously my answer as well. So speaking of quarterbacks, Russell Wilson just got a new head coach in Denver after Sean Payton was introduced yesterday. Michael Wilbon from ESPN says Wilson got bad coaching in Seattle, and that's his biggest problem now. Do you buy or sell it?
That's a big old sell for me. And, you brought up back-to-back topics that can get me pretty fired up. One, Sirianni and the Eagles, and now
I
Russell
knew you'd like
Wilson.
to get rolling on the danger Russell Wilson train.
Yeah. So let's put it like this. If that were the case, then Geno Smith would not have the year that he had this year after multiple failures as being, getting his shot at being a starter and ultimately being a career backup for the most of his career. And now you substitute in, really the only thing that changes is, you add in Geno Smith. And I think it just shows, I think it's the complete opposite. I think that Russell Wilson career probably got overinflated to a degree because he got to work with someone like Pete Carroll to kind of hide maybe some of the deficiencies that he might have. So I think that that's relatively a bad take by Michael Wilbon. And I think that ultimately he got bad coaching with Nathaniel Hackett. And I think that was just a bad, marriage of the two parties. And it ultimately showed kind of the importance of Pete Carroll and maybe some of the deficiencies that Russell Wilson had covered up by being under someone like Pete Carroll.
Yeah, I think based on watching Russell Wilson the last couple of years, it's like his own, like his own head that's his own worst problem. I don't think it has anything to do with the coaching that he got. Like look at Pete Carroll and go back to his time at USC and and Carson Palmer and Matt Leinart and that whole crew, and then going to back Super Bowls, winning one, should have won the other if they hadn't thrown. But Russell Wilson there, like they, the whole let Russ cook and all that stuff, they let him cook for a year and he played pretty darn well. And then for whatever reason, the next year or two after that, it backslid and now he's out of town. I don't think it has anything to do with Pete Carroll, maybe Brian Schottenheimer for his time there. I don't know. But Geno Smith is the answer to this question, because if you're going to blame what's going on in Seattle, explain Geno Smith, who is basically, a journeyman, backup quarterback. He had the 4th most touchdown passes and the 8th most passing yards in the NFL this year.
I'm pretty sure he had a ridiculous completion percentage as well. I want to say he led the NFL in completion percentage.
Yeah. You can't tell me that the Denver Broncos had any worse, a roster than what Seattle had. And look, I respect Sean Payton, but I think a couple of weeks ago, I think it was Field Yates or somebody like that, shared, they put Mike McCarthy's resume next to Sean Payton's resume, and they're virtually identical. And McCarthy has a few more playoff wins and regular season wins. Now, again, I'm not like backing it all in on Mike McCarthy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, let's see Sean Payton prove it, because, he got a Hall of Fame quarterback to work with himself. And at the end of the day, he still only has one Super Bowl, and only went to one Super Bowl. So he's no different than Mike McCarthy, and Drew Brees is really no different than Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson is no different than Aaron Rodgers. Let's see, and like Sean Payton today, he was getting some questions. I can't remember if it was today or yesterday after the press conference. He was asked about personal coaches and, having them around with, Russell Wilson and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, nope, that's not happening here. So it's going to be really interesting to see how those guys coexist there in Denver. All right. And by the way, Justin Fields and Davis Mills both had more touchdown passes this year than Russell Wilson. I just wanted to get that one in there.
Man, Davis Mills and all of that neck that he has.
Yes, that's right. The neck of Davis Mills.
It's just long.
Okay, so Stephen A. Smith says he wants to do late night television one day, potentially succeeding Jimmy Kimmel, if at all possible. Would you want to see that?
I here's the thing. I love and hate Stephen A. Smith, and there's obvious reasons why I dislike Stephen A. Smith, because of his feud with his good friend Michael Irvin. We can all see, where that's going to lead. But overall, I think that Stephen A. Smith, I think he'd be great at that. I think he's naturally funny. I think he's naturally genuine and honest. I don't think it's an act. I just think that's how he is. And I think that he could be good at something like that, especially the late night hours. You can get a little bit more kind of raunchy, a little bit more, say some things that you probably can't say on ESPN as often. And so I think that it would be ultimately pretty funny. I think Stephen A. is a genuinely he's just a genuine character, and I think that it would transcend well into kind of late night talk television, because I don't think he's afraid to ask or say things that would make people uncomfortable.
But is that really entertaining? I've seen him, he did the whole after the Cowboys loss and all that stuff, stomping and parading around, and is he really that entertaining? Why not just do a podcast? Why do you even need a late night TV show at this point? Does anyone even watch late night TV? I just think Stephen A. has a very specific, narrow audience.
That is true.
I don't think that he would play to a broad audience like you're looking for on late night TV.
That's true, because in late night TV, you're literally trying to gather everyone that's still up at that time. And I think that you would get a fraction of that with Stephen A. Because like you said, I just think that there's too many people that have a feelings either way towards him. And I think it would already kind of isolate him.
Yeah. See, We're Not Marshals. I want baby Stephen A. Smith to be a late nighter. I can watch that all day on YouTube. Okay. Well,
That's pretty funny when they put the Snapchat filter on him and make him baby Stephen A. Smith. I like
yeah.
that.
We Are Not Marshall also said, I know we rib y'all about the Cowboys, but most of us in the chat are Bears fans. We're in year 34 of the rebuild. At least you've been to a Super Bowl more recently
That's true.
than the Cowboys.
The Devin Hester Super Bowl.
At least you have that. At least you have that. Last question for tonight. The National Enquirer was recently sold. Have you ever read the National Enquirer, Jess?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think so. I've seen them at stores, you know, like you're in the checkout line next to like the People magazine and the US Weekly and all of that stuff, but I don't think I've ever picked one up and read it for any reason. So I'm going to have to go with no. I have not read the National Enquirer.
Yeah, I think the last time I did, I was probably 12 or something like that in a grocery store. And it's like, like as Jason is saying here, it was big when he was a kid. And that's like, it's kind of like everything else that you used to find at the newsstand. It has slowly gone away. I think it's mostly, an online publication now. I honestly didn't even realize that it still exists, but it's like with things like Twitter and social media and just the internet, it's one of those things that have kind of left the consciousness. There was just always the entertaining, like the guy from Mars, is the guy next door, and whatever else that you would see in the National Enquirer at the newsstand. But I think the last time I probably ever picked one up, it's been a couple minutes ago. But I was just curious if you ever had, because again, it's like it's such a completely different media world that we're in, like TMZ for that matter. Like TMZ has taken up a lot of that space as well. A lot of that kind of juicy, if you even call it juicy, I guess.
Half the time it's real, half the time it's just gossip. You never know anymore.
That's exactly right. All right, well, great stuff tonight. Appreciate you all for joining us. It sounds like Henry's starting to get a little bit worked up and getting the cats even going there in the background. So we better be wrapping up here, I guess. Hit the like button if you would. We've got the mailbag show coming up tomorrow. So tell your friends, ask all the questions you want about offensive coordinators. And as Derek said, he quit when he met Elvis, and Elvis has left the building. So hit that like button, subscribe, rate, review, leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform, and we will talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.
Peace.